Hi guys,
Hello.
welcome to the Knit Girls. We're here this weekend we're taking an art yarn class with Lexi Boger of Plucky Fluff.
Howdy.
So it's been interesting. It's out of my comfort zone.
And I love it,
Laura's
yeah.
having a blast. Some things I'm doing all right on, some I'm
It's anything a new skill you
struggling
have to
a little bit.
practice. Yeah.
But so Lexi came all the way from, where were you last?
Well, I was just home in Placerville, California for the grand opening of my studio.
Oh wow!
So that was the last big event or workshop that I did. Was
Was that the
home for
Yarnival
once.
that I've
Yeah,
been hearing
yeah,
about?
yeah,
I have to get out there for that. And where are you going after this?
yeah. Decatur, Illinois, and then Kyoto in March for a big fiber festival.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's exciting. Wow. So, and you have a special wheel that we're going to show y'all footage of later, but you worked with Montacroft on it, right?
Mhm, we did. We wanted to design a wheel that would accommodate all of the new creative styles that everyone wants to do. So, changes like just a bigger flyer so the orifice issues aren't such a big deal, and a whole new tension system that hasn't been done on a wheel before, so that's kind of exciting.
Yeah, it is. It's very nifty looking.
Yeah.
Does it travel well with you?
It doesn't travel that well because it's really designed to be, a very nice wheel to keep at home in your living room. It's very fine wood and all of that. So, but most people don't do what I do to a wheel, which is
Right.
travel constantly. So they didn't design it for me specifically in that respect.
But it's got a cool handle and it folds down and does some cool stuff.
Right. If you're just going to go to your guild meeting or something, it's great because
Right.
it folds down. You got a handle and you can put it in the car. But
And we'll show y'all footage of
Yeah.
it. I know it's got to be frustrating to hear us raving about it and
Yeah.
you can't see it. But
just don't put it in UPS every 2 weeks.
I wouldn't put
Yeah.
anything in UPS personally, but that's
Definitely.
just me.
We're in a FedEx hub here,
Yeah.
so everything goes FedEx. So how did you get into spinning art yarn?
I started spinning in '99. I'm an artist by trade, so, trade. I practice art. I don't make that much money out of it. But I was using yarn for my projects, and I found that I'd been buying roving at the local yarn shop, and classic me, did no research. I wasn't like, oh, what's this for? I just don't ask any questions. I was like, ah, neat.
It's pretty.
Yeah.
And I started, crocheting with it and doing stuff, and then finally I bought a hand spun yarn on accident to use in my project, and I thought it was commercial, but there was something about it that was just more alive than a commercial
Right.
yarn. Some things that just weren't consistent in it. So I went back to the yarn shop and asked if I could get some more of that. What company made it? And the owner of the shop, my local shop, said, "Oh, I made that." I said, "What do you
Cool.
mean you made it?" She's like, "I spun it." I was like, "Spun it?" She pointed at a wheel, and
Yeah.
something kind of clicked. And then I looked at the fiber on the back wall that I'd already been buying.
Right.
And I was like, oh, I want to do that. So I just took a class at that point and learned the basics. But what they call art yarn now, I think it was just as an artist and as a person who doesn't really ask questions or study it that much, I just jumped into it. I just didn't have the history to apply to it, and nobody had ingrained anything in me,
Yeah.
so I just treated it as an art
There
material.
were no rules to break.
Right, there weren't any
Okay.
rules for me. I knew the basics, and then I just began to say, well, what does this fiber want to do? What can I make with it? And
Yeah.
so it was sort of an open door to do that. So.
Cool. Do you have a favorite technique that you like to use, or do you mix it up mostly?
Oh, I am like so ADD every week. It's a new technique, like hour by hour. So I don't really have a favorite.
Okay.
Do you have anything that you kind of invented that you do that no one else has done yet that you've seen?
I don't know. It's hard to say. There's a long history of spinning, like
Absolutely.
10,000 years worth, so it's hard to know. But I just did, for example, a horsehair boucle. Boucle is very common.
Yeah.
But I had a friend had given me this whole tail,
Wow.
practically not off a horse, but the tail hairs.
Right.
And I was just like, well, what's horsehair do? And experimenting with it, and just trying to ply it. It wouldn't ply normally, but it kept throwing these huge loops because it was so stiff.
Yeah.
And then I just was like, okay, well, it wants to
Right.
sort of be a boucle. So I made this boucle out of this tail, and it became this just wild thing. So I haven't seen that, but that's like an example, but I really believe that creatively, as humans, we're part of a collective unconscious. And so I think all of this stuff is always in the works, and people who are really tuned in creatively, or on the forefront of things, just tend to be seeing what's been
Receptive,
done
right.
and start to do the next steps on things, and it's always like a group building thing. So, it's more like a movement, I feel, so.
And what's your
Things I
favorite
invented.
use of your yarn? like to weave?
I just like to hang it on the wall.
Crochet. Okay. There you go.
Well, I love to knit and crochet, but I always trade my yarn to somebody who spins traditional, natural colored
Right.
yarns. If I'm going to wear it, it's going to be, natural
Yeah.
brown in a single or a 2-ply. It's very subtle,
Uh-huh.
and I just want to knit something simple. So what I actually like to work with and use is usually very traditional.
And there's a lot of weavers taking the class because
Yeah.
weaving with art yarn is becoming a big, huge thing.
Yeah, weaving I really think is the next. I mean, weaving is already very established and popular.
Right.
I'm not saying like nobody weaves, but I think that weaving is going to be the next traditional craft. Well, I
come
mean,
back
it's
into the
already kind of
spotlight.
wild. There's been wild periods, but I think that once you mix these new creative art
Yeah.
yarn styles with weaving, it's going to explode because nothing shows off an interesting creative yarn like weaving because nothing's hidden in a stitch.
Yeah.
So I think it's one of the best
All the
ways to
craziness
show
just
it.
pops right out.
Yeah.
Especially if you can do a really open weave where you can almost see all the sides of the yarn. It really
Do you weave
shows it
yourself?
off. Well,
Are you putting off getting into that?
no. I tried to take a class on traditional weaving. This is just so classic with all of the numbers and the patterns and working the machine, and my brain just wasn't gonna go there.
Right.
But then I went home and I just have all these 2x4s where I hammer nails and lean it against the wall and I weave.
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
it's all
You
like
just do it your own
unevenly
way. Right.
spaced
And that's fun.
No, yeah, but I
Makes
mean,
it
I
a lot
like
more fun.
Yeah, I like the idea of weaving, but it has to be like geared towards my way of thinking, and I think that's the thing with all this craft is it has to apply to how your brain
Right.
works.
It has to be something you
Yeah,
want to do.
right.
Yeah. Makes total sense.
Any other questions, Leslie?
I don't, but I would love for you to give us kind of a breakdown of exactly what everything does on this wheel.
Well, the first most obvious thing about the wheel is the flyer. And this was just a couple simple fixes to the most common problems that you run into when you're doing, say, bulky or highly textured yarns, and that's where it gets either hooked up on hooks or won't fit through an orifice.
Yeah.
So what this has are this sort of a pigtail design where if you've ever used a ball winder, it's got this. So you can totally bypass all of these. So even if you had a wooden button this big that's rigid, you can still keep it right on the
Going
yarn. You just go around, wind it on, and then back. But we wanted this wheel to also be totally versatile so that it wasn't just pigeonholed into bulky art yarn or highly textured yarn. You could also do, if you want to do lace weight on this, you can, or very fine traditional yarns because they have their traditional delta orifice right here, which is what the Magic Craft wheels always have. And it's got this little point so it holds the yarn really stable, there's no shaking, and it comes through this orifice, but this orifice doesn't really have much to do with it. So you can choose to either spin normally in here or use these big ones when you're doing something really dramatic. It has a little bigger bobbin than their other wheels do. It's an 8-ounce bobbin. A lot of art yarn spinners want the big bobbins, like with the country spinner. The problem is you have to have a box wheel to support that, and that's just not as
That's a big enough bobbin
versatile.
that you can get
It's
rubber duckies on it.
I
so,
just right. It's big enough for most people's use. The other main thing that is different about this wheel than other wheels, it's got a new tension system, which is based on it almost utilizes all the different types of tension. And I wish that Owen and Magic Craft were here to talk about this part because they did the engineering. It was I was saying it needs to behave this way, this way, this way. How are you going to make that happen? Then they came up with the engineering. But basically, most double drives are one drive band in a figure 8. So it's one drive band. So if you make a change on one of the sides of it, it still affects the other.
Yeah.
Therefore, when you change the twist, the amount of twist, you also change the take up. It affects. This is 2 separate drive bands. Therefore, you can adjust those separately. So this is the first time you've been able to say, keep your twist the same, yet increase your take up, or put a lot more twist in without changing the take up. And where that comes into play, for example, is if you want to make one yarn that goes from, say, lace weight to tail spun in the same yarn, and you want to be able to switch quickly from doing something thin and fine to adding a different type of fiber that has different requirements without changing ahead or adjusting much. All you do is just increase or decrease the tension on this dry band or change your settings for your twist.
And you have some tailspun yarn on there.
This-
so for
yeah.
people who don't know what tailspun yarn looks like,
This is not the most beautiful show.
it's
of
just
it,
a
but-
demo that we just did.
But this is an example. So this is a little tailspun yarn, but you can see how textured that is. But if I want to go from that to something thin right after it, I just want to be able to make a very simple adjustment and be able to do that. And I really think that this tension system is revolutionary, and I think it's the best thing about this wheel. The flyer is great. I mean, that does allow you just to simply to get
Yeah.
things through, but it really is all of the control that you're given in here that allows you to just really get crazy. Creative,
cool.
crazy.
Can you show us how it folds?
Yeah. There's a knob here that you just loosen, and then the whole thing comes over. And then you lock it back up again, and it's got this handle so you can just pick it up.
And what is this wheel called?
This is called the Aura, and it's named after, well, it was the naming was really interesting because we thought the name was important. And it was a cooperation between me and Magicraft and I to do this. All of their other wheels have names, like the Susie or the Rose. You know, so we threw out all of this sort of name idea. But I have a yarn, a signature yarn, which is a favorite of mine called the Aura, which is this really complicated, beautiful yarn, which I would say that's like my signature one, but it just so happens to be a name that sounds like a woman's name. So we thought, oh, finally, here's a wheel
There
that
you
you
go.
can make the Aura on, and it's a woman's name, so it fits with the line, and it's got also the connotation of it just being sort of effervescent, dreamlike kind of idea, which is sort of goes along with what we'd like to think people can do with this wheel. So
And if you don't have a workshop in their area, you have a book coming out
I have a third book coming out
in January or
it's-
February.
It's going to be in January, and it's called simply titled Hand Spun. But we got that simple title because the yarns on the cover are really abstract and unusual looking. So we knew if you were to look at the pictures, you'd be like, "What is that?" But then to just say "hand spun" right on top, so people would instantly be like, "Oh, that's a handmade thing," and it'd be intriguing. So that's the title.
And you can pre-order it on Amazon now. I've already pre-ordered mine, so.
You can.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome. New way to do an old technique of mine. You guys have seen the super coil at all from the first book, all the coils went up it. And the way that I used to do that would be, remember we were applying and you'd push it up and it'd make the coil. If you do that one after another, you can do a whole yarn like that. The thing is when you apply it and push it, it makes the coils go small, big, small. So the super coil actually kind of does this. So this is a way to do the super coil with it being totally even all the way. So if you core spin a yarn that's the same width all the way, and then you do it this way, you'll end up with a super coil that's like very even. And this is also just a quicker way to do it. So I've got a core spun yarn and a core material. This is probably shaggier than you need. And I'm gonna, this is a quicker way to do the old super coil yarn that I used to do. Do you see, well, where it's like one coil after another, the whole thing is all segmented kind of coiling?
Yeah, I've done that.
So this is just a quicker, more even way to do it. So basically I'm starting the core spun yarn that I made, and this is the core material. I'm going to apply to the left because I spun that to the right. You just get going, and as usual we're going to spin normal for a while to get it on the bottom. Then what I'm going to do is turn my hand down, and you might want to film this from the top because you have to see how it comes in. So I'm going to turn my hand this way so that all the plying makes a 90-degree turn here. And then with this hand, I'm going to totally just guide this core spun yarn and deliver it right at my knuckle here. As it goes, and I'm going to push towards myself with this hand and see how it just guides everything one after another in an even row. Okay.
That's very cool. That's nice.
And if you have your take up, just
How
crank
many
in.
ways away it's on?
So you basically just push towards yourself. So you take your hand, you just push towards yourself like this, and it just evenly disperses everything.
Your index finger is applying the pressure.
My
the
index
tension for it.
finger is applying pressure towards myself, basically.
So much faster.
So much faster.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
This is like the best thing in the new book because it's like, oh my god, I've saved myself.
And it's
so
gonna be the
much
beginning of
time.
the year for your new book.
January. Yeah.
And you need to use a core spun yarn?
No,
to
no, no.
put it-
You can do this with any single.
Okay.
But I'm demonstrating it with the core spun because the other thing that's really cool is that the grain of a core spun is horizontal. Then when you super coil it like this, the grain becomes vertical again, but in this interesting way. So you just get these nice color changes with this interesting little vertical
So you're going
grain.
counterclockwise.
I'm going counterclockwise,
Okay.
yeah. And to avoid over twisting, just keep it right next to the orifice here and just let it pull it through, like just let it feed right in. So don't spin into your lap. You just sit here and boom, boom. And if you want to build up a big knot, you can. Oops, that's the end of my.
That's a big
That's the
knot.
end of my single.